Barometer of despair. Birth rate falls as millennials fear climate apocalypse. That's right. Ocasio-Cortez recently cried. I think she was crying. She cries a lot. About how she didn't know if she could have kids because the world may be ending. Okay, well, the world is not ending. Everybody calm down, and you should probably have kids. I'm not saying you should have 1 million kids, but I think it's absurd to say we're not going to have kids because we think the world is ending. I think you've lost the plot. Now, here's the important point. I made a video recently talking about how in 2006 we noticed the trend that liberals were not having kids nearly as much as conservatives. Today, 13 years after that research, we can now see that Generation Z, who are between, 13 and 19, or 19 and younger, we can see that they are slightly more conservative. So I want to go over some of these details, but I want to do something else. What I said in the last video is basically like, hey, here's how we got to this point. I want to look to the future and what we can expect, because the important thing that people don't realize, and we'll read the story, millennials not having kids. No. No, it's liberals not having kids. It is the left not having kids. Religious and conservative folks are certainly having kids. In fact, the people I know in my life who have kids and who don't, it's kind of funny. They're either religious and not very political, or they're conservative. I know only a few liberals that I grew up with, my friends, who actually had kids. What do you think that means for the future? It's not even about fearing the world is going to end, but this exacerbates the problem. The leftist worldview that climate change is just eradicating everything and we have 12 years to live, it's extreme. It's not reality, okay? I believe climate change is a serious problem. I've gone over the data. I've looked at trusted meteorologists who have even, pushed back on AOC's outrageous claims. Fact of the matter is, yeah, climate change is a problem. I think, we need to do better to invest in green technologies, but no, the world is not ending. Calm down. Not only that, the world will get on fine without humans. The issue is that we have an abundance of a specific kind of technology. And yes, carbon emissions are a problem. And we need technology to start reducing that. Guess what? We've been doing it. You know the ozone layer problem? Yeah, well, guess what? The ozone layer is healing itself too. Humans are resourceful. And even if we encounter serious problems because of climate change, it doesn't mean we're not going to solve the problem. This is a really pessimistic worldview, and it's going to produce a very, very different future than these people think of. The way I described it in the last video was that, Ocasio-Cortez made this painting animation of like a future in which they get the Green New Deal and everyone's happy and there's young people who are going to run for Congress and AOC's in her 50s. And I'm like, that's not the future. No, the future is a bunch of conservative kids, and you will be the odd one out who doesn't fit society because you're not having kids. They don't seem to understand this. And let's read the story, though, and then I want to talk more about this. Yahoo News reports, Marissa Polowitz loves children. She worked as a nanny before embarking on a career in technology, and she considers herself a nurturing person. Now 34, she long assumed she would become a parent. But as she looks around at her life in Nashville, where she lives, in the nation and the world, she has found herself wondering, do I want to have a kid who I hand this world off to? I do. I certainly do. My problem is not about thinking the world's going to end. I'm 33 and don't have kids because I'm a workaholic. Okay, I work every day nonstop. That's my problem. I need to work through that. But no, it is what it is. Rather than visions of raising up children, educating and guiding them, Polowitz's thoughts, nightmares, she says, are of having to protect that child in a world devastated by the climate disaster. Let me just point something out to you. You know why I believe climate change is a serious problem? I believe carbon emissions contribute to it. I defer to the scientists. I don't think they're always right. I don't think consensus is science. I think there are decent arguments from many people that they think the whole thing is blown out of proportion. But I defer to, the experts, man. I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to tell a panel of scientists that they're right or wrong for political reasons. I'm just going to say, you know what, man? I think it makes sense. You got everybody driving cars. You got China, India pumping out more coal than ever. And it has an impact. It does. I just think that humans are resourceful and we'll figure this one out. But look to Miami, right? This is one of the best arguments I've seen as to why the world isn't ending. And I know a lot of people use this argument to claim it's not real. No, hold on. Okay. Some dude was arguing against climate change, and this video went viral. and mostly among conservatives, where he said, if climate change was real, why would all of these people be investing in beachfront Miami property, Miami Beach? Miami's supposed to be sinking, right? If that were the case, who would invest there? And why is it then when these real estate companies are seeking funding from banks, they don't have to put a warning, I forgot what it's called, on the prospectus saying like, this property will be underwater in 10 years. They don't. So the argument then is either there's no regulation to prevent this, and they're gonna get a quick buck before the place sinks, or it's not gonna sink. Look, man, I always look to the money changers. You know, when you want to predict an election, do you look to the pollsters who are trying to sway your opinion, or do you look to Vegas who just wants a quick buck? For the most part, I'm going to go with Vegas because people don't like to lose money. You know, money talks. You can play all the opinion polls, and we argue all day. I'm so sick of polls, man. They go back and forth, and I'm just getting tired of it. But I'll tell you what, there's no politics in green, okay? When those people want to make money, they're not going to give you the BS because they don't want to lose. Could you imagine if somebody in Vegas gave odds that they knew were unfavorable to them and they would lose a ton of money because they wanted to convince you that, say, Hillary would win? No. No, they want the money, okay? So when you look at these big investment companies investing in beachfront property, I'm going to have to go ahead and say the people who know better, the people who have money and don't want to lose it, yeah, I think the world is not going to end, okay? Not only that, come on, saying the world's going to end is absolutely nuts. They say she is not the only one. Ask a millennial ages 23 to 38 and you will find the doubts. The U.S. birth rate is currently at its lowest in 32 years, with 2018 being the fourth consecutive year of decline. Usually births increase at times of economic stability. So these latest numbers have led demographers to wonder what else is on prospective parents' minds. Well, a couple things. The left, in 2006, it was noticed. Check this out. ABC News, the political fertility gap. Liberals, it is said, have a baby problem. They don't have enough of them compared to conservatives. 2006, August 23rd, this is Jake Tapper is reporting this. I believe that is the Jake Tapper in 06. Here's the thing. Liberals don't have babies for a lot of reasons. For one, liberals are more likely to abort their babies. Simple math. You take two families, liberals are more likely to support choice, conservatives are more likely to support life. That means conservatives are going to have a baby, okay, even if it means adoption. Liberal women are more likely to be progressive in the workplace, meaning they are going to be 34 and working and thinking, why didn't I have kids yet, like the story says. Conservatives, more likely to be traditional, you're going to have a lot more women saying it's time to have a family. And there are many high-profile conservative women who have done that. Some personalities have kind of disappeared because they want to have a family, and they're young. And then you get these woke progressive feminists on Twitter mocking them, saying, you know, I made a video about wanting a wife who wanted to have a family, and all of the woke women on Twitter were like, oh, what a loser. Oh my God, is that what he really thinks? And it's like, dude, I get it. You don't. Chill. You want to be on Twitter and 34 with no kids and family? Hey, man, do your thing. I don't think, whatever makes you happy, man. I'm going to do what makes me happy. But think about the future in this case. If we were looking at a Generation Z that looks a lot like millennials, this is the interesting thing. They say they look a lot like millennials, and that's true. But look at every generation, before it. There was a big shift towards a more progressive left-leaning viewpoint. Well, that's all gone. So you take in all these factors the left is prone to, and they all add up to when we look at the birth rate. And we say, wow, the birth rate is so low. What they're not getting is that if you separate liberals from conservatives, the conservative birth rate might still be low because in 2006, it was just barely at replacement, which is 2 kids per family. It was like 204 for 100 parents, I think. So is that right? Yeah, it was just 0.04 above replacement, but liberals were below replacement. And that was back in 2006. Okay, and that was probably due to feminism. I am not dragging feminism, okay? I am pointing out feminism likely resulted in less babies for liberals because women were more likely to go to school and get jobs. Conservative women were more likely to go to church and have babies. And now you have more conservative. So think about it. That bell curve is falling down. I think the future will end up being substantially more conservative, save one caveat: immigration. I don't think it's a conspiracy. A lot of people, particularly like the alt-right, think there's like this great conspiracy to bring in non-white people or something. That's ridiculous. I think liberals tend to be very open borders-y. Not completely, not all of them, but many of them. Leftists for sure, the DSA and stuff like that. And so the only thing that in my opinion, will change, that will preserve the left is that foreign-born people tend to be more left-wing. But I think about the reason why that is. You know, you come from a very poor country. I'm not saying every immigrant is from a poor country, but you come from a poor country. You come to the U.S., and California, for instance, says you can come here illegally, and we won't work with federal authorities. They say we will provide you government-funded health care from our citizens up until the age of 26. That's what they've done so far. And now you've got the Democratic 2020 contender saying health care for non-citizens, you know, whether or not you pay or you don't. It's a human right. Well, you're going to get a lot of poor people coming in and saying, sign me up for free stuff. Whereas those who were born in the U.S. and in more rural areas where you have to be self-sufficient are going to be more like, no, you take care of yourself. So let's read a little bit more. The birth rate is a barometer of despair, Dowell Myers, who studies this data at University of Southern California, concluded when the latest numbers were released earlier this year. Not a whole lot of things are going good, and that's haunting young people. On the list of not good things, they say the climate crisis, with its specter of droughts, famines, fires, and floods, is near the top. A poll by Washington Post and the Kaiser Family Foundation in September found 68% of respondents ages 18 to 29 say they are afraid of the effects of climate change, and 63% of teen respondents believe future generations will be harmed a great deal. It is a fear that was expressed by freshman Congresswoman and Green New Deal author AOC Ocasio-Cortez earlier this year during an Instagram live stream. There is scientific consensus that the lives of children are going to be very difficult, and it does lead, I think, young people to have a legitimate question. Is it okay to still have children? Oh no! Are we the most privileged and elite society in the history of humanity who literally went to the moon? Now things are going to get a little bit worse. Aw, is that so bad? Dude, these are people. AOC has a luxury apartment in DC. It's my understanding. I could be wrong, but she gets like a luxury apartment. I don't know if it's just rumors or nonsense, but she got a really, really nice building, okay? She lives in the most comfort with her Kobe beef organic burgers and her Beyond. Like, we are so privileged, we literally make fake meat. Okay, I love the idea of being vegan because being vegan is something you can only do in a wealthy country. Most people need meat for B vitamins, iron, and protein, and they don't have the luxury of not eating meat. It's a very first world thing. Heavens! Oh no, it's going to be harder for our kids. Seriously, how much harder? And are we going to survive? I'll tell you what, 100 years ago, it was substantially harder, okay? You'd be like, oh, my arm got cut, I guess I'll die. That was life, okay? I was reading some history about, I think I was reading about the Civil War. I can't remember what story it was, but it was one guy who got shot in the arm, and he died. It's like, dude, you can get shot multiple times in the chest and survive these days. No, I get it. You know, even back then, you might survive, but it was an infection. He got hit in the arm, and the infection killed him. It's like, you gotta cut your arm off. It's like, oh, it was too high, we couldn't do it. I don't know the exact story, but just think about this view they have, where they have no context for how life used to be for humans. Man, I tell you what, go live in the woods and complain about how hard things are going to be for your kids. It is mind-blowing to me, okay? Now, look, nobody's obligated to have kids, but what's really crazy to me, I think there's like a fundamental gap in understanding between liberals, moderates, and conservatives. And this is why Jonathan Haidt's research, you know, it showed, this was a while ago too, it was like 6-7 years ago, moderates and conservatives can predict liberal behavior, but liberals can't predict the inverse. They also show that moderates and conservatives use 5 moral foundations where liberals use 2. Libertarians use 1, freedom. Go figure. But moderates and conservatives have a bigger picture view. I think when you actually experience the world and go somewhere like the Brazilian favelas or Egypt or some other countries, you're like, man, we got it good. I can't imagine. Now I will say, I think climate change is a problem. I'll say it. And it's going to negatively impact other countries. But how? How you could be the privileged elite of the most advanced, comfortable, and wealthy civilization in the history of the world, okay? And be like, oh no, life is too hard to have kids. It's like, dude, they didn't have air conditioning 100 years ago. And now you can't live without it. You know, I could be wrong about this because I lived in Miami for a bit, but they apparently have a statue to the guy who invented air conditioning in Miami. Okay, I don't know. Fact check me on that one. I could be wrong, but apparently they really love the guy who invented air conditioning. Good for him. I'm a big fan as well. I love my air conditioning. Okay, but people didn't used to have that. I think back to like life in the 1800s when it was like, oh, it's going to be 100 degrees today. Better just sit sweaty and grimy, unable to take a shower because we don't have plumbing. And now you're like, life is going to get so bad for everyone. It's like, you know what, man? This worldview you have is spoiled beyond belief. You know what I do? Okay, so let's just think to what the future is going to look like. All of these whiny, terrified, shaking in their boots individuals aren't having babies. Okay. It may mean the population will shrink, but I'll tell you what, that 5 o'clock shadow 40-year-old dude chopping lumber and his 5-acre property. His neighbor's a mile down the road, and he's got to supply his own heat. He's got kids, and those kids have to do chores to survive. I'm pretty sure they're not super concerned for the most part. I'm pretty sure they're going to carry on with their life and be like, what do you mean? You got to work to survive. So the point is, you take these rural folk who actually have to strive for things. I'm pretty sure they're not going to care. So I have an interesting thought about all this, right? I was in New York, living in New York for a while. I thought about those bridges. Man, they got a lot of bridges. They got the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, the Williamsburg Bridge, the Queensboro Bridge. They got the Washington Bridge. They got, what's the other one? Man, I'm forgetting some of the bridges. They got the tunnels. They got the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. They got the Holland Tunnel. They got the Lincoln Tunnel. Man, they got a lot of tunnels. But guess what? For these urban liberals, it is and always has been. That's their worldview. One day, I walked into New York and there was a bridge before me, and I could walk across the river. They don't seem to realize there was a period where there was no bridge. And if you run Manhattan, it's like, gotta take a ferry. You literally gotta take a boat to get to Brooklyn. Now we have train tunnels. The infrastructure is all there. What do you think that does to someone's frame of mind? The people who live in cities, and they tend to be very liberal, have this view that the bridge just is. Think about, man, it's crazy to me how you can't see this, right? I've been to places, there's the Bayonne Bridge, because I lived down there for a while. I remember I was at a skate park. There's a skate park in South Bayonne. It's on the Jersey side. And literally just across the river is another skate park. And I'm standing there on the shore thinking to myself, it's literally like, what is it? I don't know, a couple hundred yards. A couple hundred yards in front of me. And I can't get to that skate park. If only there was a bridge. Well, above me is a towering Bayonne Bridge, but it's so big, you got to go a couple miles down, loop around, and it's actually several miles to get to. But I thought about wow, think about any other part of the world or country where there's no bridge and there's no way across. And people take that for granted. And so here's the point. These millennials, the reason they're not having kids, for the most part, it's nothing to do with climate change. They're just so spoiled. They've reached a point where it's like a bubble bursting. They're like, oh no, life might actually be difficult because of the way life is. And the response is just stop. That's crazy to me. And I know a lot of people who are very progressive who have vowed not to have kids because it's just so nuts when you think about it. Here's what really gets me and why I think it's really important to have kids. For one, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. Everything you've learned and accomplished, you pass on to your kids. And we don't always do a good job. Not every parent is a good parent. Not every kid has been raised properly and learned from their ancestors and those who came before them. But that's what we should strive to do. And that's why we live in a world where that bridge just is. You go to New York and there's a bridge there. Yeah, it's because a society grows great when people plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit in, right? That's the old proverb. So at some point, somebody said we need a bridge. And now here we are, lucky that someone before us built a bridge that we don't have to even think about it. That's what gets me. So that's why I think, it's you should have kids. We made this world, we made it nice. We invented these things so that human life can progress, so that we can conquer the stars. And I don't know what the goal is. I just know that we're moving in a direction. And I'd love to see a Star Trek-like world where we have interstellar ships and light speed travel and all that stuff. And so, hey, there's a pie in the sky, right? There's a goal we have. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe it's not possible. Maybe it'll never be what we want it to be, but that's the plan, right? For billions of years, your ancestors have successfully reproduced. If you don't have kids, you will be the first organism in your ancestral line to not reproduce. Think about that. That's crazy, isn't it? And all of these people are saying, life might be hard. Yeah, life's hard for rabbits, dude. Rabbits are always shaken and terrified someone's going to eat them. That's life. Life is tough. We have the most comfortable lives. Me sitting here in my foofy, comfy gamer chair. I don't know, what is it? It's an IKEA chair. I got air conditioning. I got skylights. It's beautiful. It's beautiful and comfortable. Life is great, man. And these people are doomsayers who are terrified the world is ending. But you know what? They're not going to have kids. And you know what that means? In 50 years, I'm not going to have to hear from them anymore. Okay? I mean, I'll hear from them. I'll be old with them. Millennials are all crazy. Not all of them, but enough of them. And there's going to be a younger generation, and they're going to say, hey, Mr. Poole, is it true that, like, when you were doing journalism, like, back in the day, people thought the world was going to end? And I'm going to be like, yup. Well, I'll tell you what, the reason why you don't know anybody who thinks that anymore is because I never had kids. So the only people who had kids were the people who thought life was fine. And all those young people, you know, my 40 years my younger, are going to be like, man, that's crazy. Those people were dumb. But you know what? Hey, maybe the world ends. I have no idea. I don't think it's going to end. I think those people are nuts. But I'll leave it there. You get the point. The future is going to be more conservative. And the data shows us. We can look to the past, 2006. We can look to the data today about how Gen Z is slightly more conservative on some issues. They're still very progressive. But think about what's going to happen now when these millennials don't have kids. Who will propagate their ideas and their worldview? Nobody. It's gonna revert back. You've reached that point where the bubble is burst. And those that don't, they view the world as the apocalypse is coming, and they think having kids is wrong, and they're working too much. You know, what it really comes down to is whether you agree with it or not, a traditional lifestyle persists simply because of math. Because they believe in having kids, so they will. This was predicted in 2006. Again, in 2006, they said liberals aren't having kids, conservatives are, and now the data shows it. Even though Gen Z is particularly progressive and slightly progressive on some issues, I want to make sure I make this clear. At least in my opinion, the reason why Gen Z is slightly more approving of Trump, is slightly more conservative on some issues, it's not because Gen Z has an enlightenment. It's because there are more conservatives in Gen Z. I could be wrong about that. Maybe it really is YouTube, maybe it really is social media, but I'll tell you what, if 13 years ago they said, hey, liberals, you're not having kids, the future's going to be conservative. And now here we are with the first generation, look at this, silent, boomer, Gen X, millennial, invert. Silent generation likes Trump, boomers, 40, they don't, Gen X doesn't, millennials really don't, but Gen Z likes Trump a little bit more. It's reversing. It might not, who knows? But for now, I'm gonna tell you this, warning to liberals, your ideas will not exist if you don't have kids. There it is. You can be mad about it all day and night. You're gonna be an 80-year-old voting being like, if only we had kids to propagate our ideas and make the world as we saw it. But we didn't, and therefore the people who will end up taking over the world, who inherit the world, are going to be more conservative. I'll see you all at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out.